Hello and welcome to PassFCE, a podcast which will help you get through the exam and pass FCE, hopefully.
Ho, ho, ho.
I'm here with my very first guest, Gill Hamilton,
Hi.
who's a good friend and colleague of mine from the British Council. Welcome, Gill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting.
Very welcome.
And having these wonderful biscuits in front.
Help yourself to a biscuit.
Thank you, will
and,
do.
Would you like a coffee?
A mouthful. No, thanks.
You're
I'll stick
still
to-
okay?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
fine.
Fine with the water.
Fine with the water, yeah.
Now, as I said, we worked together for quite a few years, and you have taught many FCE classes. So I'd like to ask you a few questions and pick your brain on FCE.
Yep.
Firstly, how would students know if they've got the level to take the exam? Now, I spoke about this recently on a episode of PassFCE, and I'll leave the link to the show in the show notes. But I'd like to get your opinion on how students would know if they're ready to register with Cambridge and try for the exam.
I think they really do need to do a mock exam. Give them bits of the various parts of the exam. Even give them a writing, because that's where they all sometimes fall apart on. And be reasonably strict on the marking, because students sometimes are not very good at gauging their own level. And they've got a friend
They think it's higher than it is, or lower?
Lower. They've got a friend who's passed, so they think they can also pass. But until you actually see what their level of English is like, you can't really say, well, if your friends pass, sure, you'll pass as well. And their speaking level, I found through experience, I've made lots of mistakes putting people into an FCE class just but going basically by their speaking level, and being proved very wrong.
Because
their speaking level was pretty good, not bad, they could communicate quite well. But when it came down to writing a story or writing an email or doing some reading or a gap fill, the grammar was all over the shop. So I think the best way really is to give students an exam, a mock exam.
So a practice exam, which they can, if they're not already studying at an academy, then they could find a mock exam online.
Yeah.
And I'll leave some links in the show notes where students can find these practice tests and practice exams. But the writing, I'm thinking, how could they have their writing checked to see if it is at the level of FCE? Maybe by comparing it with similar writings that there are online?
Yeah, but again, I think it'd need to be a teacher who's checked that writing. I don't think they could do it themselves. Even looking in the test books at the back have model or example writings with comments from the Cambridge team saying this, and this were good, lots of mistakes, and they give a sort of mark. But I don't think I give students, model writings, but I don't really know if it's a very good way for them to learn how to write. And I think from the writing point of view, a teacher would need to look at it, an FCE teacher.
I agree.
To gauge
I
from there.
agree.
And students very often don't even know the layout of the exam, what's involved in the exam.
And of course, they'd need to learn the different styles of writing needed.
Yep. The different characteristics of each of the different types of writing, and the timing, and the length. Just simply because you write 250, it's quality, not quantity, that counts.
Right.
And in 120, well, not now because it's changed. I think it's 140.
Yeah, 140 to 190
words now. You've got to, it's not very long really to get all your English into that space of time, in that space of writing,
and answer the question at the same time.
And answer the question, etc., and follow the characteristics of whatever writing you're doing. Sort of an essay or a report or a review or an article. They're all those little techniques that they need to learn.
So maybe the best advice we can give listeners is to go to an academy and take a preparatory course, a course that would prepare them, especially as far as the writing's concerned.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't. Lots of students want to do it on their own, and I'll study at home, but I really don't think that's doesn't work. I'm sure it doesn't work.
I agree. But if there are students who maybe can't afford to go to an academy, if they don't have the money, what advice do you have for students who are preparing the FCE at home? Because some students do that and they do pass. So I just wondered if we can help students who don't have the money.
Getting hold of material online. Cambridge have some resources online. They're not particularly generous. They give you a little bit of each.
They want you to spend the money
and buy their books or their course books or their test books.
You have to pay.
And then there are other websites that have got materials. There's some Flojo.
That's a good one. I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Used to be quite good. I haven't been on to it for a while, so I'm not sure whether they've updated or not.
They are updating now for the new exam in 2015, so they will have up-to-date material, if they don't already, for the FCE exam.
Yeah.
And we will also, at mansioningles.com, we're working now on a new CD that we should be released in January.
Yeah.
And there's also material on the webpage at mansioningles.com for FCE. But going back to the writing, would you say, Gill, that the writing is perhaps one of the most difficult parts, or would you?
I would think so, yes.
More so than the grammar, than the use of English?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can probably get students through that section, the use of English section, with sort of quite a lot of preparation, practice, etc. But the writing, I think a writing can make or break a pass or not. And if you can do it, it's the only part of the exam I always tell my students that you have a little bit of control over. You're given the readings, you're given the use of English, you're given the listening. You've got nothing to do there but do it. But the writings, you have a little bit of a choice. It's part 2 anyway. Mm-hmm. And you're in control there. You've got that opportunity to show what you know. So I think it's, if you get that right, if you get the writing right, then I think you might be on better track.
That's interesting. I want to emphasise that you are in control of the writing. You have a compulsory question in part 1, but you can choose your style from the questions available in part 2.
Yeah.
And what you actually write within the scope of the question is your decision, and depending on your planning
you can decide. And even in part 1, because even now in the new exam, well, in the old exam they gave you notes that you had to include in the letter, and now part 1 is an essay,
right?
And they're giving you 2 points that you must include in the topic that's been sort of commented on, written on, and then there's an open section for your own opinion or view. So again, you've got a little bit of control there.
Absolutely.
You've got help from them and control. And I also say, Cambridge, I think, really would like you to pass. They're not there to make your life difficult. But unfortunately, you've just got to go through the hoop. And some things that seem trivial and silly, like when you're writing a letter, is it really important that if you put Dear Sir, Madam, you end up with faithfully? If you put the name, you end up with sincerely. Does that really matter?
Not these days.
But I really don't know whether Cambridge do look at that seriously now, whether it's just me, but it's trivial, and it's better to put it in, get it right, just in case.
You never know.
Like doing your driving test, I always compare it. When you do your driving test, on the day of doing your driving test, you have to do all the things that your examiner would like you to do. Look in the mirror, put the gears in the right place, look in the rear mirror, brake, stop, etc.
Exactly.
Once you've got your driving license,
drive how you
just do what you like.
Cross your arms and drive.
Yes.
That's an interesting analogy, because when I took my driving test, I was told by my instructor to turn the mirror, the
rear view mirror,
rear view mirror, just off a little, so that I have to move my head to see behind me.
Oh, right. So
so that the instructor can see that I've moved my head and checking the mirror. In the same way, I tell my students in the speaking, part 3, to move their chairs so that they're looking at one another they're talking to each other, and they're ignoring the examiner for section 3.
That's a good idea.
It's a similar analogy.
Yeah, good idea.
Going back to, staying with speaking, I'd like to know what you think about the areas that students typically find difficult, because you've said the writing, but from feedback from my students, they get very, very nervous about the speaking, and they, in my opinion, get over nervous, and they think it's more difficult than it actually is, because most students tend to pass the speaking.
Yeah.
But that's the part.
They have to make big
they have to be pretty bad, don't they, not to get
fail,
through.
Yeah. But you're right, and I think sometimes they try too hard, and I keep saying it's not a race. You've got a minute to talk about these two pictures, but it's not as quickly as possible. Get through the picture and take your time. In part one, where they're speaking for a minute, which is so unnatural as well. I mean, the whole situation in the speaking. How often have you got to sit there and speak for a minute without some sort of feedback or comment from whoever you're speaking?
You just imagine looking at somebody's holiday photos and saying, okay, now speak about this holiday photo for a minute.
Yeah. you just don't do that.
We don't do that, no.
But you're right, students get quite nervous and they try too hard, and they shouldn't really.
They shouldn't stress so much about the speaking, because they should stress more about the writing and the use of English.
And you're an X, or you are, no, you're not an X, you're an examiner, no?
I still am, yeah.
And compare, when they say compare the two pictures and then say who's having more fun or whatever, the compare is, you still take that into account when students...
Yeah, they should be comparing the two photos, and then there's usually, as you say, a question like, which situation would you rather be in?
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is the compare part...
They should be comparing.
...is still part that you're listening for. Students cannot just go straight to answer the question. If they don't compare, would they lose marks?
That very much depends on how they answer the question. I mean, I tell my students to give a very, very brief description of what they see, and by default that's comparing. In this picture, there is a city apartment, and in the other picture there are people having a picnic in the country.
Yeah, okay.
So that is really comparing them to, and saying why they're different and what you can see in the two pictures, and then answer the question. Yeah, because there's always a question that goes with it.
So comparing is not necessarily finding things similar in the two pictures. It could be finding things that are different. Both. Because they used to be compare and contrast the two pictures, but they don't do that.
No, now it's just compare. So
are you looking only for similarities, or looking for differences as well? With that, I mean, that's all.
Not
the minute,
necessarily.
That's something got to be really quick.
I wouldn't put it that much under the microscope. I would say that obviously, if the two pictures are of two different families having lunch,
one out in the picnic and one in the kitchen, you would just say that.
If they say, well, this family's having lunch in the countryside and this family's having lunch in the kitchen, then they've compared them.
Okay, and that's enough.
In my opinion,
but the sort of in the minute that they've got, you would say that 45 seconds of that minute, if you're going to be really strict with time, is answering the second question.
Correct. And what I would advise, if they feel they've answered the question and they still have 15 seconds, is just to personalise one or both of the photos, and that gives you something to speak about. I prefer having lunch in the country because I like being outside. I like the countryside, and you can lie as long as you keep speaking.
Exactly. The important thing is that you keep going until the examiner says thank you very much.
Until the examiner stops you. Yeah. Exactly.
And you were going to say part 3. Was it part 3? Where they have the big picture they've got. Well, they've done away with that as well, I think.
Now that's changed.
There's no pictures now.
No pictures. There's a rubric text, which in some respects it's clearer because it's not as ambiguous as a picture could be.
Yeah, the problem was sometimes interpreting the pictures, So and it's divided in two parts.
It's divided in two parts.
Still discuss whatever their points are.
Yeah, for example, one that comes to mind, holiday destinations. Discuss holiday destinations for a family of 3, for example, and then the conclusion you reach is which 2 places would it be best to take a family to, for example.
So it's still basically the same idea, because in the old exam it was still the 2 questions, discuss all the options and then either choose or which one you consider the best, or choose 2, etc. But they've just changed that and made that they stop you after 2 or 3 minutes
Yep, they'll stop you after 3 minutes and then
ask you the next question of choose which one you think would be best for this family.
And then you have to reach a decision or a conclusion in the same way that Chi used to be, the advanced exam used to be. Now they've introduced that into FCE to make it uniform, to make it the same. So yeah, you will get stopped and then you will be given another minute to reach a conclusion.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
that sounds fairer, really.
Yeah,
sounds better.
We'll see. I haven't actually examined that yet, but we'll see what happens the next one will be in January or March.
March will be the
first one. Any special approaches to use of English, Gill?
Use of English. Well, I suppose you just go through all the grammar points that tend to appear in the use of English.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you, because I've made a list here of grammar points that students typically have problems with. Because, they've been studying grammar for hopefully 2 or 3 years at least, so they've probably studied most of
I think by that age
grammar
stage,
points.
All the grammar points should have been. We're back to.
But I think there are some. I'm interested to see if you agree that prove difficult for this level of student, that you have to go over, that you have to,
without a doubt,
that you don't have to go into every grammar point from level 1. No, but there are some grammar points that they should know at FCE that they have problems with. What do you think? And
they should get right.
Correct. What do you think? What do you think they are? Any spring to mind?
I presume the wonderful present perfect, the present perfect continuous.
Yes, I have.
Get wrong.
I have that.
Since and for.
Present perfect and present perfect continuous.
Passives, they tend to, particularly passives with it's said, it's believed, it's thought.
Okay, not passives that you can easily translate from the Spanish passives. No,
they don't tend to have a problem there.
Okay, so can you
maybe the sort of have something done passive.
The causative.
Well. Yeah, they should be.
And what were the ones you said before? Sorry.
The sort of it's said to be, or he's believed to be.
He's believed to be coming to Valencia.
It's thought.
It's thought to be a problem.
I did one yesterday, in fact, with a group, and it came up. One of them was, it is said, everybody thinks that the new film will be filmed or come out next week, and it's thought. So that passive.
Okay. Any others?
What we did before, the modals that we spoke about before.
Modals in the past.
The past modals.
And I will leave a link in the show notes if you want to study modals in the past with Gill and I. We have an episode for that.
Things like wish.
Yes, I have wish. I put wish with the third and mixed conditionals because they've usually got by then the first and second conditional. Yeah. Which may be some light revision, but the third conditional, especially with the hypothetical wish and if only, they need practice
and
with.
And you get the regret that comes in there as well. Other points that come up, I suppose present continuous for the future. Things that's one that future forms.
I have future forms in general. Speaking about the future.
That will is the only future.
Yeah, the students for some reason just use will for the future.
Everything. Hang on, you've got the same in Spanish. You've got different forms of the future, not just will. Oh no, we haven't. Oh yes, you have. I will iré, voy a ir, voy. Got the same. The only different one is they use a simple present, where we use a continuous. My parents are coming tomorrow. Yeah.
Mis padres vienen mañana. Okay.
They use a present there.
They use the present.
Whereas we would use a present continuous.
Unless we're speaking about trains and buses and timetables.
Yeah.
The train leaves at 6, but yeah.
And that's the same in Spanish. El tren sale a las 6.
I think I read somewhere that we'd use present continuous for the future more than we would use will for the future.
I think we use both those forms far more than we use will. The going to and the continuous.
Going to and present continuous for plans and arrangements.
Yeah.
And also verbs and other expressions for the future, like I hope to, I intend to, all with the infinitive. I plan to,
I expect to. Gerunds and infinitives, are they on your list?
Gerunds and infinitives are on my list, along with relative clauses, perhaps.
Oh yes, the which, who, that. Yes, they're defining and non-defining. Yes, they're quite useful too for writings.
Yes. And also for writings and in general, the article.
And use of English.
The article.
Yeah.
The, a, and an.
The article. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I find I have to go over that at least twice in a year. It's a difficult area, but...
yeah. And then you've got what about your anywheres, nowheres, somewheres?
Yes, also.
Any's and...
What about question tags? Would you worry about question tags for first certificate? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Useful, but no.
No, I don't think I would.
I don't think they're used. Do they come into course books?
I can't remember. They're ready for first certificate. It's there, but I don't remember it.
On the right-hand side of the page at the bottom, quickly get through it.
Yeah, it's along with got to.
Used to.
Hidden along with got to.
Used to is another one, no?
Used to, be used to, and get used to, which is at the beginning of the course, and I remind them.
Why do they always put them in the same unit? Why do they make life difficult for students? Put get used to, be used to all together.
Yeah, it's a lot for them to get used to. And one more I have, impolite questions. Indirect questions. Impolite questions. Indirect questions.
That's useful too.
Yeah.
They're useful for writings as well. Could you tell me? I need to know.
Could you possibly?
Could you send me?
Those are the main. I think we agree that those are the main areas that you should be looking at and studying.
Vocabulary is for first certificate essential as well.
And collocations.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I've never been happy with the range of vocabulary in the course book I'm using at the moment, which is ready for first certificate by Roy Norris. I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you're interested. Which self-study books and materials
I've really lost track of self-study books. Would you
recommend? Because there's the first certificate organizer, which I have used in the past. That's not bad.
And there's a trainer or something. There's a first certificate trainer I saw in the library, which has got, I think, exam material.
Did it look okay?
Advice and points. Did it look up to date?
Did it look okay? Would you recommend it, or
maybe
useful?
sort of to fish through, not as sort of a book, but it gives you. It's quite useful from the point of view. It gives you, bullet points to say, don't do this, do this, be careful with this, or the answer is this because.
What about obviously the if you're studying at home and you're not at an academy, then the Cambridge practice tests probably are definitely recommended.
Listening is another thing students need to do a lot of.
Yeah.
Towards the exam. Mm-hmm. A lot of, and they're not prepared to either. How often do you ask them? Do they watch a film in English? Do they go to the cinema? And they don't.
No. And listening
definitely is something that they need to.
Listening and reading perhaps are two things that students can do in their own time and improve fairly quickly if they make an effort.
And if they're reading in their own language, they don't usually have a problem with the reading if they are readers.
Okay.
Except, was it the second reading where they have to put phrases back into the text? That's quite a nasty activity.
Looking for the pronouns and the linking
sort of put
expressions.
it all back in. I don't know how useful that is or what that shows. I suppose that shows that the students can understand and connect a text.
Yeah, cohesion.
But
it's
difficult. Not an easy one.
So looking back on the years that you've taught first certificate, what has been the pass rate of students in your classes, would you say, on average? Can you give a ballpark figure, as our American cousins would say, of 50%, less, more?
I think maybe a wee bit more, but only because the people that I've suggested or recommended have done the exam. So people generally who were not ready haven't done it or have done it and not passed.
My God, do they actually listen to your advice? My students,
not unless they're really they don't. No, you're right.
I tend to say, well, I think you should wait another 6 months, but I can't. I'll do it anyway.
Fair enough. If you can't wait, you can't not let them do it.
It's their money.
Exactly. But I'm just advising you or telling you that I don't think you're ready, and then you take the final decision.
Right.
But generally, I would think the people, I'm going back now 3 or 4 or even 5 years since I've done first certificate. But people who I thought would pass have passed, and people who I didn't think would pass haven't.
So you're looking at maybe 60% then, probably. A little more than half of your students.
And then
pass.
Occasionally get surprised. Somebody who thinks not going to pass has passed.
Yes.
And the reverse.
No, I agree.
Somebody who thinks not going to have any problem fails because they just got uptight on the date, or they didn't finish one part or whatever. One year somebody just got it all wrong, passing their answers onto the answer sheet, and got back to question 8 and still had 2 more lozenges to fill in,
and time was up. So listen carefully to. I'm going to emphasise what Gill's just said, that when you pass your answers onto the answer sheet from the question paper, make sure that your answers correspond to the numbers.
Super careful, because if you get it wrong, that's it. You're not going to get another answer sheet, another go.
If you miss one number, if you're out of synchronization by one number, then all of your answers could be wrong or right. but just be careful. Just be careful when you transfer your answers.
And not start counting all the words in the writing as well.
You should know how long.
More or less. You can calculate length.
Any other tips and advice?
Don't try too hard. Sometimes I think students try too hard and make a big mess because they want to put in, especially in sort of writings that are opinions, and they want to put in your moreovers, your furthermores, in addition, besides.
Too many words.
Somebody's too many is just as bad as not enough. So don't overuse. Use things that you're confident with, obviously. A few phrasal verbs, if you can. We didn't mention phrasal verbs there, but presumably some phrasal verb in somewhere.
In the writing?
Writing, they're going to appear in the use of English. Somewhere a phrasal verb will appear in the gap fill or the transformations. Presumably.
But don't students get too stressed about phrasal verbs in the same way that they get too stressed about the speaking? Start
memorising a list of phrasal verbs, and if it appears in the transformation, you don't know it well. It's not going to make or break the exam.
Well, that's all very good advice. Gill, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. And
on the show.
On the show. If you want to find more about Gill, I will leave a link in the show notes to an interview I did with Gill on YouTube, and also a link to the episode in which Gill and I talk about modal verbs in the past. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.